This is a picture of Jimmy Doolittle sitting by his wrecked bomber after his raid on Tokyo in 1942. And if you can imagine, April 18th, 1942, nobody in China had any notice of this raid. All of a sudden, in 3 provinces, in Zhejiang, Jiangxi, and Fujian, 75 airmen come raining down out of nowhere, Americans, after bombing the Japanese capital. And a lot of them are injured, all of them are lost, and all of them need to make it back to friendly territory. And out of those 75 airmen, 3 died in the crash, 8 were captured by the Japanese, and the rest made it back to our friendly lines, which is pretty good odds, in my opinion. What's bad about the story is the cost. In the wake of the raid, the Japanese, understandably pretty upset. They didn't really have an appreciable presence in that part of China. They sent in a punitive expedition and killed over 200,000 Chinese men, women, and children, razed entire villages to the ground. What's remarkable to me is that after that, that was in April of 1942, the Chinese didn't stop rescuing downed Americans. They knew what the risks were. They'd seen the proof of what would happen to them if they helped, and they did it anyways. And in fact, preliminary study shows of all the missing aircrew reports filed by the 14th Air Force between March of 1943 and September of 1945, a lot of people, about 55%, died in the crash. And that speaks to the peril of fighting a dangerous enemy, and that speaks to the state of aviation at the time. It was very risky, very dangerous. The mechanics of it, the navigation of it, especially in a place with unreliable maps and no navigation aids. Only about 5% were captured by the Japanese, and the remaining 40% were all taken back to friendly lines, which meant that if you survived the crash, you had over a 90% chance of making it back to friendly territory, which is pretty impressive. You can imagine what that did for the morale of the American pilots that were fighting over there. People were rescuing folks literally all across China. It didn't matter where you went down or what their political affiliation was, you were probably going to get rescued. They were rescued by communists. They were rescued by unaffiliated civilians. They were rescued by people that were supposedly collaborating with the Japanese, like puppet troops. These people would still rescue the American pilots. They were rescued if they fell down in urban Shanghai. They were rescued if they fell down in Hankou or any of these urban centers that were heavily occupied by the Japanese. Literally falling down in a Japanese city, and they were being pulled out by friendly Chinese. In fact, one of the more interesting stories is Rex Barber, the man who shot down Admiral Yamamoto, fought in China after that and got shot down over the city of Zhejiang on the Yangtze River, with a fairly large river port. Landed almost in the city, and you can imagine that this guy's probably not somebody that we want to have captured because he knows about the magic codes. He's the guy that shot down Admiral Yamamoto. He'd probably not be treated very well, and he'd probably, unfortunately, give away some critical intelligence information in that interrogation. Well, what happened was 2 Chinese boys who were about 12 years old hid him under a brush pile until the Japanese left. They came through with dogs looking for him and everything. In fact, one guy stood next to the brush pile, lit a cigarette, and then tossed the match on the pile. And he's sitting under there like, don't light on fire, please. And then they basically shaved his head, put him in Chinese civilian clothes, put him in the back of a cart, and smuggled him past Japanese checkpoints back to friendly territory.